Hi, good evening, and welcome to the Minority Report. I want to welcome you this Tuesday, the 9th, or in the 9th month. We are in the month of September now, and I mean, this year, I think is going faster than any that I've seen. And so we are well into September. September is on the way, and we are continuing doing what we were mandated by the people to do, and the Minority Report represents another element in the work of the Minority Council. This evening I want to thank you for logging in. I want to also say that you can continue to view this program on the Tobago Updates website, on the Tobago Updates YouTube channel. However, the most viewed platform is the Tobago Updates Facebook page, and I want to encourage you this evening to share the live link. Let's get as many persons involved and viewing this evening, because there's a lot that we have to discuss today, and we have some guests in studio who are definitely going to bring the program alive. If you want to share your comments or ask questions, you can send those questions to our WhatsApp number. That is 284-6597. That's 284-6597. So we want to encourage you, get as many persons, share the live, let's stay logged on, let's stay locked in, and let's enjoy the program this evening quite a lot. In our headline corner tonight, we have some headlines which would have taken place over the last couple of days. We saw the closure of the Castara roadway, and we think that it's temporarily closed. A release came out from the division, a number of persons being affected by that along the north side communities. Also, we saw a big story in the news. Some schools not ready for the opening of the school term, and we're going to hear more about that as we get into our program this evening. We also saw tutor representative calls out the Secretary of Education and her division over ill-prepared schools. That again is another conversation that has been reaching headlines in the news, and we're going to have a bit of discussion on it. But the one thing that I want to close with this evening in our headline corner is the discrepancy between the information from the Chief Secretary and the Deputy Chief Secretary over the attendance of persons at the Diaspora Forum. And we would have seen, and I'll ask the director to share that post, where the Chief Secretary would have released a post stating that the forum was attended by 48 individuals. And I think he would have come out in defense of certain statements being made where persons were calling for accountability, and he would have taken the opportunity to speak not just on behalf of the Assembly, but also on behalf of the Deputy Chief Secretary, and to clearly indicate to the population of Tobago that there were 48 persons who would have attended that Diaspora Forum. However, when the Deputy Chief Secretary himself was interviewed, we had a bit of some misinformation, and I'll ask the director just to run that short clip so that persons can understand the type of headlines that we see being made in Tobago and those that represent us outside. Director?
And going back to last night's event, last evening's event, how many persons turned up?
Well, me, I would have said about maybe 200 persons turned up. You know, people see differently, but what I see is about 200 persons. I saw.
Oh Lord, yes. I mean, we can't help but laugh because we're seeing mounting circumstances and instances of misinformation, a disingenuous approach to governance. And again, as the program rolls on this evening, we're going to get a lot more into it. However, that's in our headline corner. Moving on to our What's Good moment. And this evening, our focus is solely going to be on education. So we're going to say congratulations to all students participating in the CSEC and CAPE examinations. Notably, and I want to point this out, the ministry has indicated by way of release, the Ministry of Education, that there has been a small improvement in the overall results of the CSEC and the CAPE this year as opposed to 2021. And so we can safely say we see the impact of COVID that we would have seen cripple some of our results last year. Our students have really made some strides in coming back from those setbacks and so on. But I want to move on. Our next congratulations is to the teachers on their bravery in adaptation, in their adaptation process from complete in-person tutoring to online platforms, navigating through these platforms, learning them whilst teaching. And I want to just say this evening, that hats off to our teachers, hats off to our principals. This was not an easy task. It was not an easy feat. And oftentimes we focus only on the healthcare workers who definitely would have done human service to keep our citizens alive. But in terms of our recovery process, we see teachers, principals really stepping forward and would have done quite a lot in terms of keeping the future of this nation, in terms of our intellectual capacities and our intellectual investments, keeping them on track. And now we're seeing the fruit of the labor that would have been put in. It's an incremental increase, but it's an increase nonetheless. And finally, in our congratulations this evening, I want to say congratulations to parents who would have stood their ground by not giving up, and they supported their children and the teachers throughout this difficult time of transition and change. It would not have been possible for us to see improvement if all hands weren't on deck, and it really took a lot from some parents, many of whom would have braved the storms of the COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions, some of whom would have experienced loss of income and so on. But yet still they would have gone on to support their children and their families. And we definitely want to continue seeing that type of spirit being displayed in our families and so forth. So this evening we want to just welcome you once again. We want to say continue to share the live. And we're going to take a quick break and then come back as we introduce our guest in studio and get into the meat of the matter. Stay locked on, and share the live, share the live.
Our national borders, our first step to security, but a possible access point for guns, drugs, crime. If it does not look right, do the right thing. Call Crime Stoppers anonymously. 800-8477. Report possible border crime.
Life, the concert.
Says our destiny.
Friday, 23rd September.
The night before Republic Day.
She says our destiny. She get next to me.
At the concert capital, the Queen's Park Savannah.
Circle down on the lady. He just to say you are driving me crazy.
Guinness welcomes Malvado and his full band with rising superstar Skag. Life, the concert. Powered by Guinness and Strictly FX.
I love how you're moving your ways.
Entertainment. Yes, we're bringing it to you. Tobago Updates. It's all about the new entertainment show, the VIP Experience, hosted by your boy Snoopy. Tune in every Wednesday from 8 p.m. and on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. We're bringing to you the best Tobago has to offer. We're showcasing interviews, music, and everything that is fun. So join me on Tobago Updates for the VIP Experience. Yeah, man.
Watch how you're backing back on me. Like about to overload. Watch them sexy big old woman. Beauty from head to toes in the sun. Skin too, don't need no lotion.
And we're back this evening, and quite an interesting program we have lined up. However, before we actually get into it, let me take this opportunity to welcome my guest in studio. I will start from my far right, and I want to say welcome to the Minority Leader, who is always, I mean, a big hit with this program and many of the viewers. I think a lot of comments coming on the nights that we have the Minority Leader in studio. Welcome, Minority Leader. And next to him, we have the always smiling Minority Councillor, Mrs. Petal Daniel Benoit. Welcome, sir and ma'am, to the program again.
Thank you so much, Myla.
This is your program, so. You know, I want us to kick it off because we have quite a lot to get into this evening. We have, before we get to what our title is, Education Matters, I just want to throw something out there because we as here in Tobago, we seeing a number of travel taking place and persons standing up and getting out there and saying that they're representing Tobago, whether it's internationally, regionally, or even right in Trinidad. And over the last week, I think all of Tobago cringed when we saw something take place that I don't know if this is the type of example we want to set for our young persons. So I'll ask the director just to put that photo up as we begin. Let's look at this particular photo. Let's pay attention to it. Now, let's not pay attention to the face that is being made in the photo, but this is actually a photo of the Assemblyman and Secretary for the Works Division, Assemblyman Trevor James, who attended the Spotlight Forum in Trinidad at the Hyatt Regency. And at a time when the Prime Minister would have entered the forum and the entire room stood, he chose and opted to remain seated. And yet again, when the Prime Minister was introduced to speak and everyone stood up as an act of respect, not for the man, but for the office of the Prime Minister, Trevor James chose yet again to remain seated. Thank you, Director. Minority Leader and Minority Councillor. I know this is not the meat of the matter, but this is a meat of a matter. Yeah. Tell me.
Marlon, if what is indicated or what you narrated is really the circumstances under which the Assemblyman is sitting, it is cause for great concern. Because in spite of how you feel about a person, you ought to respect his office.
Yes.
Yes? And the office, similarly, I'm sure everybody are not favorites of Mr. James. However, you respect the office that Mr. James now holds. He's Assemblyman as well as he is Secretary of Infrastructure.
Agreed.
So to me, it's quite disrespectful if indeed what is said was done. And we are coming out of our 60th anniversary celebrations where our founding father would have laid some words. Discipline, tolerance, and production. What example is being set for young persons?
Wow, this Minority Leader, I don't know if you could speak. You look like you're laboring to bring this topic.
Let me say good night to our viewers out there. Thank you for joining us, and let me also congratulate our students, parents, teachers, you know, and I have a simple encouragement for them to go, you know, put your best foot forward, you know, and all we ask for from the parents, from the students, and from the teachers is your very best, and whatever that is, you know, that is as much as we can ask. When I saw the picture and I observed what was being said in terms of it was the Prime Minister at the time entering the room and then going to speak, and the protocol dictates that when the Prime Minister, Head of State, President, that those offices are in your presence, that you stand as a show of respect. And the fact that Mr. James would have disregarded the office, not the person, but the office of the Prime Minister in that way, speaks a lot about Mr. James and also the party he represents, because that also tells us the tone and the manner in which they intend to engage with the central government, which is one of confrontation rather than coming together, rather than collaborating and ensuring that we can get to a place that we work in harmony, that we work for the best interests of both Tobago and Trinidad.
Yes, and quite rightly said. when I saw this particular photo, what came to me, and in the mind, nobody knows what was going on in the mind of the assemblyman, but in his mind, he is probably thinking that that is a stand that he's making for whatever reason. But the first thing that came to me is that this is a disrespect to the people that put him there.
Of course.
This is a disrespect to Tobago.
And this, you see, this has to go back squarely on the current chief secretary and which is his boss, because at the end of the day, you have to set the tone, you have to set the standard. And for me, if this person would have conducted themselves representing your executive council, because that was the lone representative there, you should ask that person to apologize.
Yes.
And I think it's not too late. And I think Mr. Trevor James should do the honorable thing and apologize to the office of the Prime Minister for that conduct, whether it was in absentia, where he was absent-minded or so, but he should offer an apology and an explanation as to what would have caused or influenced that action at that time. So I think it warrants an apology. It's that serious, and I'm calling on the Chief Secretary. I hope he too would have had a view of it, and I hope that he would have had some form of discussion and asked his secretary to do the honorable thing and apologize.
Well, there you have it. A call actually went out. Someone with a public voice has now taken up the fight to indicate that we believe that an apology should be forthcoming. And so we start off this program today on a very sobering mood and note. We go right into the discussions. The title of this evening's program is Education Matters, and it has a two-way spin to it. Education matters as it pertains to different things that have to take place, and education matters, which also means that it means something. And I want to bring first of all to the conversation the impact program. I don't know if many persons would have remembered, and not to really go into this evening, but we want to ask a couple questions. We saw a program launched by the division termed Impact, which was supposed to address the needs of students who were, I think, on the lower end of the SEA table. But I don't know, Minority Leader and Councillor, you all could probably enlighten me in terms of if you all heard anything about it. Because I don't know if it's a secret program.
No, well, I think I would have seen on another frequency when that an interview was done introducing the program and giving some insights as to why the program needed to occur. But outside of that, I have not really heard if the program happened, if the objectives were fulfilled, how many persons participated, what were the outcomes, parents' feedback, teachers' feedback, students' feedback. I haven't heard anything. I don't know.
Okay.
Minority Leader?
So just like you, I just heard about it, but in terms of actual feedback or report as to success, what was the expected turnout and whether we would have achieved those goals and that kind of thing, there was no real reporting on the outcome. And I am quite disappointed because we know in the Tobago scenario, the under 30 underperforming persons within the SEA exams was quite high, which required a special kind of intervention this year. And we know, of course, we're coming out from the COVID impact and so. So you would think, yes, I looked at what the program was meant to achieve, and theoretically very sound, and they had all, but what I recognize in my own investigation is that there weren't proper consultation with the stakeholders. So you had a situation where even couple days before the program was to be launched and started, principals nor the persons who would have applied to be part of the tutor, to be the tutors and so on, were not properly identified and engaged. So what you have is again was a rushed program, and I may add a botched program, because once you rush it, once you fail to prepare, then you have to prepare to fail. And one of the challenges as well is how you go about implementing programs like this. So we have a situation where it is summer, or well, the vacation period, and that period is really an opportunity for teachers to have the opportunity to rest and also to prepare for the new term. So if you were engaging a program like that, should really target tutors, perhaps our senior, you have those teachers who still have a lot to contribute, probably retired, very experienced, and have the kind of technical know-how to treat with our slower students, who, may need a little different kind of approach and that kind of thing. And so I was quite curious as to why you would target the very teachers who are already in the system and put them back into an environment to manage such a program. And I also looked at, in terms of the issue of lack of consultation. You would recall the PDP, one of their greatest commitments was to make sure that they consult in every step of the way, in everything that they do. But we are now seeing a situation where a simple program like this, and one of the greatest cries coming out from the major stakeholders were that we weren't consulted, which is quite a travesty and quite unfortunate.
So you see that lack of consultation taking place across the board, not just in education, but in tourism, in works, and everything.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, it is our children that are feeling the brunt of the incompetence and the inefficiencies that exist in this system. Because when you look, these are some of the most vulnerable students at this time that requires the greatest set of assistance. And this program be so targeted to assist, fail to do what it was really designed to achieve.
And the thing is, what would have also happened in the past? I think there was a similar program under the former Chief Secretary and Secretary of Education that was also geared towards dealing with remedial students, particularly coming out of the SEA program. And it appeared as if, because from all the reports, that program seemed to be a success. So maybe we could have looked at what would have happened there. There was some foundation set. Look at what happened there, improve on the things that went well, and those things that we feel possibly may not have gone well, then we can upgrade and that kind of thing. So, and of course, there was buy-in and consultation, because it was something that was planned beforehand.
Ongoing consultation took place,
knew exactly what role they played in the program. So,
but I want to highlight as well, again, misinformation. Again, we see absolute confusion being displayed between the secretary, the chief secretary, and so on. And I want to highlight that with a clip that I'll ask the director to run, where we would have heard what the secretary said, because this impact program was designed to feed into what was deemed a Tobago-centric curriculum. And I'd ask the director just to run that first clip with the secretary explaining what was taking place at that time.
To include Tobago-centric content and context. Extensive stakeholder engagement of all staff, students, parents, and the general public that will be inclusive to the education sector, amounting in high rates of digital literacy. Currently, the task force for this strategic planning has already begun, and secretary, assistant secretary, administrator advisors are now on the way to producing a document that will revise all current organizational structure charts and align human resource capital strategically for higher performance in the Department of Education, the Department of Research, and the Department of Technology.
Many months later. that the division will establish a task force soon, and that task force will lead the way in doing the public consultations on education to treat with ensuring that when we work in the curriculum, we are doing it in a manner that belongs to the benefit of all Tobagonians.
So it would not be ready in time for the start of the school year in September?
No, it won't be ready in time because the bill that is needed in education is significant.
Lie again. Lie. Liar, them is the biggest liar.
Now, folks, we saw the Secretary of Education indicate, and this was, I think, in the month of April, clearly indicate, that was Mandate Monday, clearly indicating that a task force has already been established, and she called out the persons involved in the process, and they were well on the way to developing this document where they craft the education systems and so on. Here it is, the Chief Secretary in August, on an interview when asked by, again, Tobago Updates journalists about that very said task force. He is now saying, months later, that what will happen next is that a task force has to be established. And these are the people's hands that our children's education and future is in. And we're doing this because members of the public, and I'm saying this to the live, members of the public, sometimes when the minority leader comes out and he speaks, or the minority councillor makes a statement, people like to quote-unquote attack and try to condemn. But these are the words of the persons with the responsibilities. And we're hearing it clear. There's absolute confusion, even in the education division. So minority leader, we would have seen quite a number of things unfolding in the last couple of days. We know that we had the reopening of schools and so on. We have a number of clips on the show tonight to run. I want you to just give your opening comments as it pertains to what you felt, how you felt over the last couple of days, seeing our children and our school systems literally being destroyed.
Well, I firstly just want to say to my colleague, Ms. Zorisha Hackett, it's never personal. No hard feelings at all, my dear. You know, this is about Tobago. This is about Tobago's children. And this is where my first priority lies. It lies with the interests of the people we are making Tobago and Tobagonians our priority. So all we're asking you to do is do your work. Do your work, and once you do it well, it's going to be love in the house. And if you don't do it well, we're going to be calling you out. And so it's never personal at all.
Nice. So, Director, I want you to play our first clip as we enter into this discussion about education matters. Let's see what's been taking place over the last couple of days.
Of the 57 schools, 56 will be opened on Monday. It doesn't mean that everything is complete, but we would have categorized these works into high, medium, and low priority. High priority means that we would have treated with issues such as ceilings and roofs. We would have dealt with plumbing. We would have dealt with electricals. Anything that deals with or affects the health and safety of our charges. Medium and low priority would not affect the reopening of school. And so as a division, we are going to continue with dealing with those issues as we progress throughout the academic year. We are not going to risk the health and safety of our students, so these works will not occur on evenings. We are, however, going to treat with them on weekends, and low priority will be dealt with during the December break.
Right. So that's the first thing. So we heard a public announcement that 56 of the 57 schools, and an apology was forthcoming with respect to the non-opening of the Scarborough Secondary School. However, the next thing we saw, I think the very next day on Monday, was a circular, and I'll ask the director also to pull that up on the screen, pertaining to another school, and this is Speyside Secondary School. A circular came out in terms of the school not being able to open fully.
In the dead of the night.
I'll echo those sentiments, in the dead of the night. And this is just one, and we're going to continue this conversation because here it is. that it was announced 56 or 57 schools. And I know between both of you, in terms of your investigations, a lot came forward in terms of... So tell us, how many schools do you think actually opened, and how many schools you feel or you know that have been opened by force and then children have been sent to? I just heard a few today alone that had to shut down.
I am unable to quantify in terms of numbers how many schools would have actually opened and stay opened throughout the duration of, well, today in particular, because we know yesterday tutor would have had their rest and reflect. So today would have been the measure by which we determine how many schools reopened. And we know for a fact that outside of the schools publicized by the Division of Education, in terms of Scarborough Secondary and the Speyside High, there were other schools that principals and teachers had to call their parents to remove them from the schools because the schools were not ready for occupation.
Well, and for me, Marilyn, I don't really want to focus on the fact that the division was unable to have our schools prepared and ready for our students to return to school. But it's really a focus that shows a level of incompetence on the part of the PDP administration and the secretary and assistant secretary in particular, where they give commitments and are unable to meet the commitment. So you recall, just in the Easter period, on Monday, we were told that all schools will be ready and properly equipped for for the return of students during that period. And when the school was reopened and we recognized that there were a number of schools that were ill prepared to receive students, you would recall where the secretary, in trying to deflect, started to attack the principal. Well, not the principal, the chairman of one of the denominational schools, and even went as far as to say that to call out for an audit. In fact, she gave a commitment that there would be an audit. And I am asking her on this show at this time, what is the status of that audit that you promised into denominational schools and the grant that is given to them? What is the status of that audit that you promised? Because you cannot use these things as a tool to deflect and to attack person when you are under pressure.
And personal attack. And fast forward, we were at April, fast forward to reopening of school after this July-August vacation.
Yes.
Tutor would have sat on this very set and would have indicated that he sat over the July-August looking at what was not happening. And his thing was, this is the time period where the major works in schools would be conducted. And if it didn't happen during this period, when will it happen?
Exactly.
He also was pointing out to the fact that the school repairs started very late. And because of the late start of the school repairs, it meant that schools will not be ready for the opening of school, or if they were ready, the work would have been botched, the work would have been rushed, the work would not have been well done. So come a few months or a few weeks from now, you may have to redo the same work that you would have paid for. And those were the issues of tutor. I am not sure if the division and the secretary would have dealt with the issues of tutor.
And the point is, again, so tutor would have raised issues in the interest of the safety of both the students and the teachers, who have to basically come onto the compound. And yet you saw a clear all-out attack on the individual.
Yes.
Not treating with the issues of the day, which is that you really started your procurement process and award of contracts to the contractors very late. And it meant that you had persons up to Sunday busy in schools. That person, and I really want to commend the contractors who would have really gone over and beyond to ensure that our schools were open. But it should not be like that. What you have 2 months to prepare our schools.
But Minority Leader, outside of that, July and August did not creep up on us.
No, and that's it.
We know that July and August will come in 2023.
Exactly. And a number of the issues that were ventilated in the earlier part of the year, the Easter term, those are the same issues that exist.
Correct.
So it's not for want of not knowing what has to be done.
Shared. The schools were closed, and outside of that, this administration, through its secretary and its assistant secretary, would have clearly outlined that schools were closed for a duration of 2 years, so the work that needed to be done was great.
They knew.
And the point is, this administration takes responsibility for nothing, absolutely nothing.
No, they take responsibility when things go well.
Things go well.
So when it goes well,
it's them.
It is the administration.
When there's problems, it is the public servants.
Yes.
And this is why we are calling on the public servants to CYS. Cover yourself. Because at the end of the day, make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's. Because when problem hits the fan, it is your name that they are calling. It is you who will have the questions to answer, and therefore you have a fiduciary duty to make sure you follow the procedures and the protocols, and whatever is asked of you, make sure it's something that could stand the scrutiny, and ask them to put it in writing. If they cannot put it in writing, they cannot put their instructions in writing, it means that it probably cannot stand scrutiny. And
something wrong.
Therefore, you ought to ensure that you protect yourself, because it is clear as day.
They will not protect
They
you.
will not protect you.
And it's the irony, Minority Leader and Marilyn, it's the irony. A few years ago, when things were going bad, what was the quote of the current chief secretary? Don't blame. Don't blame
the public servants.
Blame the politicians.
Liar politicians.
That was his word.
That was his.
Liar politicians.
Yeah. So
now the tables have turned.
The tables turn, and they are telling you, no, don't blame us. Don't blame the liar politicians no more. Blame the public servants.
And the thing is, they are actually throwing, for want of a better word, the public servants under the bus.
And creating fictitious narratives. They're coming up with all kind
of reasons.
Manufacturing all kind of things.
So many persons may not have heard, and Minority Councillor, you quoted a bit of what the tutor representative said. So I'll just ask the director just to run that clip for what sparked all this controversy from the tutor representative.
You know that 2 former teachers who just came out of a classroom are in hell, and who, if they were in classroom now, would have found tutor not doing enough to be doing something like this. I mean, we would have spent some time posting gala, so many different things took place during July, August, and nothing where school repairs is concerned. So they starting this late, they can't be serious. So when we don't have the avenue to negotiate and discuss these things over a table, then we will have to have these discussions in the public, and they like social media. So that's why things like the TV6 News and so forth, we have to utilize these channels to reach these same persons who seem to be enjoying life outside of thinking about the portfolio.
So there you have it. We heard Braden Roberts, who is the tutor representative for the Tobago officer, and he would have outlined a number of things there where he felt as if what was supposed to have been done has not been done, and I think it would have sparked quite a bit of controversy, even all-out attacks from the secretary, and then she set
and all kind of
yes.
things started to
So
attack
I
the young
also
man.
want exactly.
Yes.
I think he even received some threats. I want to also let the director pull up. I just sent you something, director. I want to bring this up on the screen as well for the benefit of our viewers.
And it's a level of hypocrisy, because as the tutor rep rightfully pointed out, these persons were recent former teachers, and one
correct.
was also tutor rep who had a lot to say and would not condone this kind of action.
Exactly.
Was if he was still in wearing that hat, and to come now and sit down in the policy making position and fail so miserably,
yes,
it's quite unfortunate.
And it's rather, again, strange and ironic that because you sit opposite or on the other side of the table, your comments are quite
different. Yes.
And I do not carry any brief for the tutor rep, but here it is. One of the main arguments they're saying is this gentleman, because he's now raising issues, somehow becomes PNM.
PNM.
So everybody who raises an issue
is a PNM.
PNM.
But again, in a previous incarnation, can we say that the then tutor representative, who is now assistant secretary, was
PDP and was
when he was raising the issues at the time?
Well, I think what we can do, let us see. I want the director play this clip what I sent you here. Let's look at this quickly. Typical authoritarian, never at fault. But I blame myself for giving you that power. And this was a post by our Secretary of Education. Typical authoritarians. And this was when? October 20th, 2015.
Never at fault.
So folks, this is not a fake profile. This is the secretary herself posting. And I want you to run the clip of the video, because we want to remind persons who the assistant secretary was. Director.
She has been talking about initiatives, the fact that the secretary has been talking about initiatives to be rolled out in education in Tobago, but no discussion has been held with the association. We are of the view that the Division of Education, through the secretary and administrator, needs to sit down with the association and have meaningful discussion.
Wow.
Are we hearing a similar sentiment from the current tutor, the Tobago representative?
And that is why
that there has been no consultation, hence he is coming in public to hear his...
And what is even ironic, this current assistant secretary is now saying, when the last interview on Tobago Updates, that it is not really the business of tutor rep to be wanting to meet with the secretary. But here he was there complaining about no consultation.
No consultation.
That is hypocrisy.
And these are the voices. You see, these are persons with short memories.
And that is why we've been saying to Tobagonians, and you have to ask yourself the question, can we really trust these people? Because when you examine their words and their actions, they speak out of both sides of their mouth.
Exactly. And director, again, you're busy tonight, so run this next clip that we have lined up here. Because we want to, the population has to hear what is happening. Go ahead, director.
Were these matters documented to the division on the part of tutor?
So, throughout...
Because that was one of the issues raised yesterday as well, with your prior appearance and speaking to some of the issues in a general way. Were these matters documented to tutor, and in a similar manner, is there documentation as a reminder and as a call for these meetings on the part of to the Division of Education?
All right, so let's address the meetings. And even the submission about the meetings, and there may have been one meeting, and oh, come on. You were sent a letter where we were supposed to have a meeting, where the administrator was so disrespectful in just not having a meeting come out. To say you spoke to the administrator and then they didn't follow up, then you already did anything? You just tell the administrator to do better what you did.
So your normal course would have been to ensure. So what you're doing is confirming that the documentation would have gone to the division through the administrator.
One of the principles, anything that is not written isn't said.
Correct.
So we write. I would have sent a spreadsheet of issues in January. The said secretary commended me for being organized. You did nothing with the data.
What are we seeing here? What is happening? What is taking place? And we hearing this assistant secretary berating this gentleman who is holding the same post that he held prior to now being in the PDP administration. And again, let's hear how Braden responded to that. So, Director, let's go right to that particular clip.
We had the opportunity to have on with us Assistant Secretary Orlando Kerr speaking to some of these issues. One of the things that would have been raised, a number of these issues that you're raising at this point, and I know you raised concerns similarly in relation to meetings and so on. How has the progress been with that? Has there been any follow-up in that regard?
So if I'm just to respond to that shameful interview that took place yesterday, we reach out to the division to negotiate over a table. So we don't have what is happening now. I am out here advocating on a daily basis because that's where they are, social media. Now, to discredit the speaker because I can't deal with the truth is an age-old tactic. So I'm not fazed. Labeling me a PNM, talking about, and telling lies about what I said about the secretaries as is zesting, that never came out of my mouth. To talk about the secretaries, that never came out of my mouth. Let us deal with the issue now. You purporting to deal with the truth and fearless, but a set of lies were told on this station yesterday.
And that is that when they are confronted with issues and challenges, they try to muddy the conversation so you get distracted by all, it's smoke and mirrors.
Your
character.
Yeah.
So they attack your character, so it's in an attempt to take away from their incompetence, to take away from their failures and their misgivings, and what the real issue is.
So we are distracted by the dress code, we are distracted by the zessin, we are distracted by the galas. But according to the Twitter president, some of the things that he is accused of saying did not come out of his mouth.
He never said it. Yeah. And we listened to that clip. First, we listened to that clip where they were referring to. That is the first clip we listened to. And nowhere in that clip did he say anything about who's dressing and who dressing up.
They also project a lot as well, so you would recognize some of the things that they probably know that they're very well doing or are popular sentiments on the ground. They try to rope you into the conversation as well.
Yeah.
And so that we no longer focusing on the issue, because one of the real issue with this school repair program is the fact that yes, we knew from very early what the scope of works were. We knew all the schools because we were told since Mandate Monday that they collected all the reports on what are the issues in every school. So that was clear. We also knew from very early what it would cost, because we were told that the Executive Council approved $21 million.
Correct.
The last part of the puzzle to put together where we had challenges is in awarding contracts. What was done in the past and what is usually done, you have competitive process. When they outlined their process just a week ago, they told us that they went to sole selection. And sole selection provides an opportunity, and that's why it's highly disregarded and highly one of those areas that you, unless it's an emergency, absolutely have to, unless it's a branded kind of arrangement where you only have one supplier and that kind of thing. But in a situation as simple as providing contract services for school where you need persons providing sealing, painting, and those kind of things. You allow for competitive arrangements so that all of Tobago who are properly registered can apply and participate in the process, and the board of tenders that you will put in place will choose the best.
Yes.
That didn't happen in this situation. And perhaps the question we have to ask is why? Why did we not allow for the proper competitive tendering process to go forward? And what were the impediments to that?
And Minority Leader quite rightly asked, and again for the benefit of all our viewers, let us listen to how that came about. Mr. Director, I forwarded to you two clips there. I want to play them back to back so that we can understand what was said by the secretary through the speaker on that day that they held the press conference.
The criteria of course, for selection was that the contractors would have the financial resources, as mentioned before, to commence work within the schools and mobilize effectively without any mobilization fee. 2, they have the necessary resources to mobilize and commence the work immediately. 3, they could complete the work within a limited time frame requested. And 4, provides high quality results. To ensure that the criteria for emergency works would be met, a contingent of contractors was selected based on the recommendation from the division within the THA, with the main criteria that they had successfully satisfied contracted works within the THA in the past. Successful, meaningful works was completed within time frame, budget, and of course, industry standards.
Over as well to, you would have been here recently and spoke to some concerns in relation to schools. I'm certain you would have had a very busy day yesterday engaging with and doing your visit.
Right, so we would have heard some stuff there coming out of that press conference. Minority Leader, you were mentioning something that is I think is very interesting to know. Do you want to just share with us?
No, well, I'll allow Minority Councillor first to expound on what was said before, and then I would finish up.
No, in listening to the clip, one of the things that the officer would have indicated that in his outlining of the process that they will use to determine who will be sole selected, he said that they would have looked at works done in the past. So you would have, as a contractor, you would have had to successfully completed works for the Tobago House of Assembly prior to this contract.
Yeah.
But our information is that there are a number of contractors that were participating in the sole selection process that would not have worked
before
for the Tobago House of Assembly before. So the question is, how did you determine that they would have successfully completed works?
And more than that, and that's why I felt so sorry for the young man. You could see the young man struggling. You know, when you're uncomfortable with the information and perhaps know what you're saying perhaps isn't consistent.
But before Minority Leader, just from my recollection, the other thing I think came out why the works became emergency because of an elapse of time.
Yes, that is not.
That is incompetence. You don't reward incompetence by so that justification, an emergency is something unforeseen. If you have a natural disaster, something you just could not plan for.
Yeah.
You had,
COVID.
Since I'm saying the Easter term, all of that period to prepare, because this is something that happens every year. You know that you would have the school repair program, you know what is the process, you must put in your tender committee and so forth, and you send out your packages for contractors to tend. But I am happy that the young man would have outlined the criteria. Because you see, once you set your criteria, then you have to abide by it.
Exactly.
And if your criteria is, one, that you must have had some kind of relationship with the THA where we can judge that you have the competency, the technical know-how, and you would have done work already, assessed, and could deliver. If that is one of the reasons. And then he also went on to talk about your financial capacity.
Yes.
One of the major ways of assessing financial capacity is through the CPU unit, the Central Procurement Office, CPO office. And what they do, when they assess you to pre-qualify you, they look at your financial wherewithal, what you have available to do works, and then they would categorize you. So they will place you whether small, so you say under 40, work 0 to 40, medium 0 to 200, and that kind of thing. So it will be quite interesting when this Public Accounts Committee comes to call this program under scrutiny. It will be quite interesting, the contractors that were sole selected and whether they in fact met the criteria as outlined, and that is all we are concerned with. Whether they met it, because we have no issue with Tobagonians getting opportunity. Let me put that on record. You could be black, red, white. We have absolutely no issue with bona fide Tobago companies contracting services getting work. But all we are saying is that you must be in line with the criteria set, because
yes. But I want to take us back to when this administration came into office and the utterances, and I wish if we had that clip tonight,
with Mr. Augustine,
utterances of the current Chief Secretary in relation to emergency works, which would have occurred due to an emergency. Which was a natural disaster. Yes? And he indicated that this administration's views on soul selection for emergency program, to the extent that they are now in the process of auditing the works under that. And we haven't heard anything of that audit.
Nothing on that audit either.
So my call tonight, since we are auditing and we are very uncomfortable with so selected works, to the point that we want to audit programs to make sure they are in keeping with what they ought to have achieved and within the guidelines. Because you may recall also that a public officer would have been suspended pending investigation due to a very similar situation. So I am hoping, and I'm calling on the Chief Secretary to let us level the playing field. If we are uncomfortable with soul selecting, let us audit and let the chips fall where they may. I'm calling for an audit into this school repair program, and in fact let the findings be public so that we all can appreciate what was the true cause as to keep our children. Two of our main secondary schools, I want to be able to understand. And this, I take no joy, because I have relatives and we're all Tobagonians. And we all want to see our students having the kind of quality education from day one. So I take no joy, but we had two of our main secondary schools unable to open because, and I want people to understand, it had nothing to do with public officers, and it had nothing to do with Kelvon Morris or anybody else.
Or the tutor representative.
But because we had a breakdown in the procurement process to the point that 2 weeks before school, we are now putting a system in place to try to scramble contractors from all over the place. And this administration must account for that kind of debacle.
Well, their accounting is to throw the administrator under the bus.
No, and my thing is, we cannot accept that. We want a thorough independent audit that Tobagonians, we all can be satisfied as to what transpired, because we won't accept a secretary going on Facebook and making spurious allegations, in fact, defamatory allegations that, that up to this day she cannot provide the evidence.
No evidence.
She promised us, again, can't even deliver. Just as how she promised an audit after she attacked the pastor. She promised us on Monday that she was giving a bombshell that would expose some kind of collusion. When the media call her, she running and ducking and sending the media to she communications unit.
But that is quite unfortunate.
Quite unfortunate.
That you will make such comments in the public domain and accusations about collusion. That is serious
in some countries, that is treason. Without any
without evidence.
And when you look at the general demeanor of this secretary, she's unfit for office. This secretary is incompetent and unfit for office. And perhaps the chief secretary, as I had advised him in Easter, should consider asking her for her resignation, because this is the second opportunity she would have had to deliver our schools on time, and she failed. And at one point in time I was championing Orlando, but based on his own utterances, I have to reconsider, even if he too is fit for the position of Secretary
as we heard
of
how
Education.
the tutor representative referred to him in terms of the number of lies that he would have brought to the forefront.
Very disappointed.
Very disappointed. So folks, we are on the Minority Report having a very sobering discussion this evening, but as with all good things, we must come to an end. I'll ask the minority leader just to give his closing comments, minority councillor as well, before we say good night.
So I want to thank all of you again for tuning in and participating and supporting the minority in our work. As you started in terms of the teachers, I want to say that I have a new appreciation, especially coming out of COVID. I have a new appreciation for our teachers and our principal and those persons who assist our children during the day while they're at school. We thank you for your service. And as a parent, I will commit to working with you to ensure the furtherment and the betterment of my children. And I also want to extend that to all, ask all parents to work with your children, invest, because books, uniform, not cheap. Yes, you would have made that investment. Continue to make the investment in your children and your ward. So thank you to our teachers, and we ask the administration, they promised to fix it. Get it right.
Yes.
Fix it. Do better, please, for all of us.
Get it right.
Definitely. So I just want to endorse the sentiments of Minority Council. I want to also thank everyone who would have had a hand in ensuring that to date we are able to get our students into schools in a fairly secure environment. I want to also encourage our parents, our teachers, and our students at this time, that we have this opportunity to be back out after, going through the challenges of COVID-19 and the distance learning classes. I want to encourage them to really put your best foot forward. Education is indeed the key, and therefore it is your passport for life. It is that one thing that would take you through life, and therefore you really need to give it that kind of attention. To our teachers, I know even at this time you have your challenges seeking more, in terms of your negotiations, and we know how frustrating that can be. But at the end of the day, we hope that you would also consider the education of the children and continue to give of your best, notwithstanding that you have this ongoing challenge on the side. But and we just want to continue as your minority to work for all Tobagonians. We want to continue to make you our priority. We would continue to advocate. Of course, we would support, as we always say, we would support what is good for Tobago. We'll continue to give support to this administration where there are policies that we believe that would benefit Tobago. We would also advance ideas that we believe that can work as well. But when there are issues, we will be there to ensure that we also have a voice and also prosecute those issues to the benefit and the interests of all Tobagonians. So I just want to say good night and thank you all for, joining us, for giving us that support, and for the prayers as well, which we need at this time. We just want to thank you, and we'll continue to work for you.
Thank you very much. And you heard it right here on the Minority Report. Sobering words from our minority leader and minority councillor. I'm Arlan David, and I'm saying to you, thanks for the support, thanks for logging in, thanks for being with us this evening, and we continue to execute the mandate as given to the Minority Council in representing the needs and the issues of all Tobagonians. I want to say have a wonderful night, and I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday as we're back again to discuss the issues that are pertinent to Tobago's development. Have a wonderful night. God bless.